Dark sexual fantasies are something many of us have had at one time or another. Handcuffs, ropes, deep dives into bondage and kink, or going for more extreme sexual fantasies. But for some, fantasies and reality slowly blur, and when fantasy isn't enough anymore, sometimes it can lead to cold-blooded murder. The Sunstrip murders, to fully understand this story, we need to dive into the story of the two people who would become the center, Doug Clark and his son of a he was the son of a naval intelligence officer. The family moved around quite a bit, and as Doug got older, in 1967, he had enlisted in the U.S. Air Force stationed in Colorado and Ohio, but he was eventually discharged from the Air Force, and he drifted around for the next decade and worked as a mechanic. By 1980, though, after moving to Los Angeles while visiting a bar, he met a woman. The woman's name was Carol Bundy. She was a 37-year-old nurse working at Valley Medical Center in Van Nuys. She was there to watch her on-again, off-again married boyfriend. Carol herself had a past, something Doug didn't know. When the two met that night, Carol claimed that both her parents were violent alcoholics and that her father had raped her and her first husband had been abusive. According to Carol, Doug began to tell her about his fantasies of killing people and sexual sadism. How these fantasies actually did shape into reality remains unknown, since both were known liars. Doug started bringing prostitutes back to the couple's apartment to have threesomes. Then he took it further by asking Carol to purchase 2 pistols for him to use. He told her he was ready to fulfill his fantasy of killing a woman during sex, that he wanted to feel her vaginal contractions during her death. One night during June 1980, Doug came home and told Carol about 2 teenage sex workers he had murdered after picking them up on the Sunset Strip, telling her he had ordered them to perform oral sex on him and then shot them both in the head while taking them into a garage and raping their dead bodies. Some that knew her said that after this she would do anything to please her man, and she lost any boundaries. Doug quickly seduced Carol and moved into her Van Nuys apartment with her 2 sons. While living together, the two soon found out that they both shared dark sexual fantasies, but fantasies soon took a turn into dark reality when the two began to molest an 11-year-old girl who lived in the same complex, even photographing the acts. He had then dumped the bodies near the Ventura Freeway. It was after this Carolyn started to go out and troll the Strip. Besides Doug, together the two found the victim on Highway Avenue in Hollywood, a young sex worker who jumped into the front seat. Carol sat in the back seat and handed the gun to Doug, who shot the girl in the head. Carolyn undressed her body while Doug drove along the Hollywood freeway until they got out of the city. The body of the young woman had been found a few days after they vanished, and the other young woman a few days later. Her torso was found, her head was found separately by a man in Burbank. Carol claimed that they had kept the head in the freezer and that Doug had used it as a sex toy. She even went on to say, when I had my fun, it was with makeup. I was making her like a big Barbie head. She also told authorities, I don't know if you guys have ever in your life shot anybody, but it's really fun to do. It sounds terrible, but it is. Meanwhile, Carolyn still continued to attend her married boyfriend's performances and afterwards would often talk with him. After a few drinks, she confessed to him about the murder. He was alarmed and implied that night that he might tell the police. So in August 1980, Carol lured him into his van to have sex. While they were inside, she shot and decapitated him. Carol left various evidence behind, including shell casings from her gun. However, 2 days later, she confessed to her co-workers that she had killed her on-again boyfriend. They called the police and she gave a full confession to her and Doug's crimes. After Doug's arrest, the murder weapons were found hidden at his workplace. Carolyn was charged with the 2 murders, her boyfriend and an unknown victim, whose killing she confessed to having been present at Doug, and was charged with 6 murders. At his trial, he acted as his own defense and tried to blame Carol for everything, claiming he had been manipulated. The jury, however, did not believe his story and sentenced him to death in 1983. As of 2021, Doug is still on death row. Carol made a plea bargain and in return for her testimony was sentenced to 25 years for her former lover's murder and a term of 27 years for the second murder of the Jane Doe victim. Carol Bundy died in prison from heart failure on December 9, 2003 at the age of 61. Thank you all so much for listening. If you have any recommendations, please feel free to comment or contact me. I'm on all social media, and they are all linked on the page. If you would like to support the show, you can find me on Patreon, which is linked as well. Please feel free to leave a like and rate and review. If you enjoy the show, I'd love to hear from you guys as well and your thoughts on the case. Please be respectful to the parties involved, and until next time, take care.